Hello everyone, and welcome back to Turkish Spotlight Secrets. I'm genuinely thrilled to sit down with you today and revisit a story many of us have carried like a quiet melody, a feeling that returns every time we hear their names together. We're diving into a love we first learned to recognize through a screen, a connection that surprised us by feeling so immediate, so present, that it seemed to echo outside the frame. It's a tale about two people whose paths crossed at just the right time, in just the right way, and who, through triumphs and trials, built something that still lingers in our hearts. If you've ever wondered how an on-screen bond can feel so real that it reshapes your belief in romance, you're in the right place. Prepare for a heartfelt, nostalgic journey, because today we're unraveling that spark, that unwavering chemistry between Erkan Merrick and Hazal Sabesai, a love that, as our title hints, lives forever in my heart. Before we dive into every stolen glance and whispered breath, if you haven't subscribed to Turkish Spotlight Secrets yet, now's the moment. Your support encourages us to keep creating stories that make you feel seen, to keep chasing the truth behind the sighs and the smiles. Hit that button and ring the bell so you're always the first to know when we return with the next chapter. Now, let's stroll back to where it all began. Do you remember that series that took our evenings hostage, the one that had us clutching cushions, pausing our plans, pressing replay on the tiniest moments because they felt like clues? Week after week, scene after scene, it fed us moments that hovered between fiction and reality. You know exactly the one. The production where Erkan and Hazal met under bright lights and impossible schedules, and somehow, between takes and rewrites, something deeper began to bloom. It wasn't simply the script nudging them into each other's orbit. It wasn't just the way a director called action or how a camera framed their faces. We could feel it in how they listened, how their body language shifted, in the kind of silence that has gravity. From that first day, when professionalism wrapped every word they exchanged, we sensed a tremor underneath. The slow burn was unmistakable, the playful jabs, the teasing retorts, the guarded smiles like doors cracking open. Little by little, the boundaries blurred, and we found ourselves emotionally invested, rooting for them as if the scenes were windows and we were peeking into something private and precious. What captured us wasn't only the sweeping romance the show promised, but the authenticity Erkan and Hazal brought to every moment. They felt like two people finding each other in the chaos, creating a small sanctuary between call times and crowded sets. They faced misunderstandings, the demands of careers accelerating in real time, storylines that asked them to bend and break, and still, we watched them cling to gentleness. The vulnerability in their performances drew tears from even the most guarded hearts. The triumphs they celebrated together felt like a gift they allowed us to share. When the scenes cut to joy, those honest, unplanned laughs, the way one would steal a glance just to make sure the other was okay, we could feel ourselves beaming right along with them. Think back to the moments that defined them. Erkan, often seen as composed, a little distant, committed to structure and discipline, revealed a quieter tenderness when he stood beside Hazal. Around her, his edges softened. He'd listen more deeply, protect without smothering, stand tall but bend where it mattered. And Hazal, luminous and determined, became a safe place. Her strength wasn't loud, it was steady. She had that grounded warmth that made vulnerability feel like a brave choice rather than a risk. In the scenes where the world seemed too heavy, she became the pillar he leaned on, and when she needed someone to believe in her dreams even louder than she did, he didn't just cheer, he cleared the way. Of course, it wasn't perfect. That's the secret of why it touched us so fiercely. We saw them navigate conflict, mismatched expectations, the pull of ambition, and the relentless spotlight that demands answers when your heart isn't ready to give them. They didn't shy away from difficult truths. We watched them stumble, then choose grace. Forgiveness wasn't packaged as a grand spectacle, it was in the quiet acknowledgments, the late-night talks where fear finally met understanding, the willingness to grow even when growing required change. Every challenge they survived seemed to temper their connection, making it stronger, more honest, less fragile. Their chemistry? You could almost touch it. It was in the half-smiles that arrived a second too late, in hands that found each other without looking, in silence that didn't feel empty but safe. The way they moved together suggested a language only they understood, an unspoken vocabulary of glances and breaths. And we, sitting at home, felt like the lucky confidants who recognized the code. We watched the romantic crescendos, yes, but we also paid attention to the hard weeks, the scenes shot when one was exhausted or distracted or carrying something heavy. That's where their connection shone brightest. When the cameras were rolling and real life insisted on showing up anyway, they answered with patience and care. As time passed, we witnessed an undeniable evolution. Erkan, so often described as the dedicated professional, opened his world to the warmth Hazal offered. He didn't lose himself, he discovered gentler notes in his own song. And Hazal, never one to shrink from a challenge, found in him a partner who steadied her courage and amplified her light. Together, they built something that wasn't just romantic. It was transformative. Their love didn't ask them to become someone else. It invited them to become their best selves. What made it feel enduring, beyond the initial electricity, was how intentionally they nurtured it. The bond wasn't a firework. It was a lighthouse, consistent, guiding, present even in fog. They learned to speak their fears out loud, to name what they wanted, to negotiate the daily compromises that separate fantasy from adult devotion. Between long shooting days and social media storms, they made time for small gestures, a shared coffee when minutes were scarce, a message that said "I see you," a laugh that broke tension before it became distance. The grand declarations were wonderful, but it was the everyday care that gave their story its lasting glow. And we can't ignore what their journey offered us. Erkan and Hazal reminded us that adversity doesn't have to be the villain, sometimes it's the forge where sincerity is proven. They taught us that communication isn't glamorous, but it's the heartbeat of trust. They showed us that two people can face an unpredictable industry, intrusive curiosity, and the weight of expectations, and still choose gentleness. For so many of us, their story reawakened hope, the belief that love can be both brave and kind, that it can survive even when life demands change. There were red carpets where a single glance between them spoke volumes, interviews where a question made them share a smile that felt like a memory, behind-the-scenes moments where their laughter spilled into the cracks of a long day. And yes, there were pauses too, seasons when work sent them on different paths, when time and distance tested patience. But every time their names met in a headline, every time an old clip resurfaced and our timelines filled with comments, we remembered why it mattered. We remembered those scenes that felt like promises. When one of them faced pressure, the other answered with presence. When one took a risk, the other became the safety net. That's the essence of love that lasts. It isn't immune to doubt or fatigue, it simply refuses to abandon the table when conversation gets hard. We saw them meet misunderstandings with explanation instead of accusation, meet worry with reassurance, meet plans with flexibility. They kept choosing each other, not because it was easy, but because it was real. And how beautifully their individual growth aligned with their shared journey. Erkan's discipline became a gift rather than a wall, he learned to soften without sacrificing excellence. Hazal's independence remained her crown, but she allowed support to be a strength rather than a concession. Together, they modeled a romance where ambition and tenderness can coexist, where love doesn't shrink your dreams but makes them more possible. That's why their story has roots, it wasn't built on moments alone, but on meaning. If we ask what gives their connection its staying power, we arrive at something simple and rare: consistency. It's not about perfection, it's about showing up. About the late talks that run past midnight because turning away would be easier but emptier. About remembering an inside joke months later. About noticing when the other is quiet and choosing to ask why. Trust is built in 1,000 tiny bricks, and they laid them patiently, even when the world kept pressing its nose to the glass. The impact on us is undeniable. The love we witnessed spoke to the part of us that craves a partner who listens, a companion who believes we can be both complicated and worthy. Their journey made us rethink what we demand from romance and what we're willing to give. We cheered when the scenes soared, but we also learned from the moments that asked for courage. They pushed back against cynicism with softness, against spectacle with sincerity. And now, as we come to the end of this walk through their story, take a breath and notice the feeling in your chest. We've revisited the first spark that caught our attention, the chemistry that refused to be ignored, the way their personalities didn't clash so much as complete a circuit. We've watched them grow beside each other, fall forward together, and rise again with a kind of resilience that looks like love with its sleeves rolled up. We've seen that their connection isn't flawless, but it is faithful, and perhaps that's the most inspiring thing of all. They've reminded us that true love is a craft. It's communication, yes, but also the willingness to be changed by what you hear. It's unwavering support, but also honest boundaries. It's having the courage to dream out loud and the humility to apologize when you falter. It's choosing gentleness in a world that rewards noise. That's what stays after the credits roll. That's what makes their story feel like it never really ends, it just keeps echoing in the spaces where we need it most. Thank you for walking this path with me today. I love that Turkish Spotlight Secrets has become a gathering place for people who care deeply about stories like this, for those who believe that tenderness matters. If this journey stirred something in you, if a particular moment between Erkan and Hazal came rushing back, if you remembered a scene that made you believe a little more, tell me in the comments. What was the look, the line, the laugh that did it for you? And is there another story you want us to revisit with the same care? If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with someone who needs a reminder that love can be steady and brave, and don't forget to subscribe to Turkish Spotlight Secrets if you haven't yet. Your support helps us keep making the content you love, and it means the world. Until our next video, hold on to the moments that moved you, and keep a little room in your heart for the kind of love that grows, forgives, and stays.